Have you ever wondered how light first found its way to humankind? That single spark, the one that tore through darkness, warming the cold skin of the earth. Who gave it to us, and who paid for it with eternal pain? They say, in the first age of the world, the gods of Olympus looked down from their golden thrones, while men below shivered, naked, fragile, and lost in the night. There was no fire, no warmth, no hope, and among the mighty titans, there was one who couldn't bear to watch them suffer. His name was Prometheus. He saw in mankind something sacred, a flicker of divinity buried beneath weakness. So he did what no god dared to do. He climbed the heavens, stole fire from the chariots of the sun, and carried it down to earth, a gift meant for the divine, now burning in mortal hands. It was rebellion, yes, but it was also love. When Zeus learned of this betrayal, his fury split the sky. Thunder roared across Olympus. Lightning cracked like the sound of judgment itself. To him, Prometheus hadn't just stolen fire. He had stolen power, defied hierarchy, and mocked the will of the king of gods. And in that moment a punishment was born, one darker than death. Prometheus was seized, dragged across the clouds to the lonely peaks of the Caucasus Mountains. There, Hephaestus, the god of fire himself, forged chains so strong they could hold even eternity. The Titan was bound to the rock, his body exposed to the sun, the wind, the endless sky. Each morning, the air trembled with the sound of wings. An eagle, the messenger of Zeus, descended from the heavens. Its beak tore into Prometheus's flesh, ripping at his immortal liver. And when night fell, his body healed, only for the agony to begin again at dawn. Day after day, century after century, pain without death, suffering without end. Yet, in all that torment he never screamed. He never begged. His eyes stayed fixed on the horizon, on mankind below, huddled around the fire he had given them. Because even chained to stone, Prometheus had already won. His pain became their warmth, his silence their song, and every flame that burned in the dark was proof that the gods could be challenged, that light could be stolen and still belong to man. So the next time you sit by a quiet fire on a cold night, remember this story, the story of a titan who defied heaven and suffered endlessly so that humankind could dream in the light. This is the Dark Punishment of Prometheus. If you love ancient myths told in a calm, cinematic way, hit that subscribe button and drop your city and time in the comments below. Close your eyes, take a deep breath, and let yourself feel rooted to the earth beneath you. This is your time, a moment to drift into a world long before ours. A world where gods sat high on Olympus and humanity trembled below, small and fragile, struggling just to survive. A world where the nights were bitter, the cold biting through every bone, and the darkness was a living thing that crept into every shadow. There was no fire, no warmth, no hope. Every flicker of light, every small flame, was a dream they couldn't reach. Every night carried the whisper of fear, every day a challenge of survival. But there was one titan whose heart beat differently, whose soul was closer to mankind than to his own kind. His name was Prometheus. He could see what humans could not yet see in themselves, a spark of potential buried beneath weakness and fear. He knew that without fire, without light, mankind would never rise beyond their small, trembling beginnings. For him, it wasn't just an idea or a notion. It was a necessity. His heart carried a strange, quiet love for humans, a love stronger than the power of the gods, higher than the golden heights of Olympus itself. He understood that true strength lies in the light that humans must carry within themselves, a light the gods had tried to forbid. And so, one day, as humans scurried through their tiny homes, shivering, hands curled tight against the cold, Prometheus made a choice. A choice that was dangerous, rebellious, almost reckless. Zeus, king of the heavens, had said it clearly: fire belongs to the gods. Humans are not worthy. But Prometheus couldn't ignore the suffering below. It was love that drove him, and love has no chains. Silently, he climbed toward Olympus, the high peaks where the sky seemed to touch the stars themselves. There, in the brilliance of heaven, he saw the flames, pure, untouchable, alive with power. Each spark was a secret, each flicker a promise of strength and life. With care, with courage, he stole the fire, a forbidden gift, burning with the heat of the gods, now his to bring to the earth. As he descended, he allowed himself a small, knowing smile. The humans would finally feel warmth. They would finally see light. When he reached the earth, he placed the fire into human hands. It was a tiny flame, but it changed everything. Men and women gathered around it for the first time, letting its warmth seep into their cold fingers, watching its light chase away the shadows. The fear that had haunted their nights began to fade. Little hands glowed in the firelight, each spark telling a story of hope and survival. Humanity had been gifted something more than fire. They had been given a chance, a way to thrive. But this gift was not without consequence. Olympus watched. Zeus's eyes blazed with wrath. The clouds of the heavens trembled. Lightning streaked across the sky, and the air grew heavy with judgment. He saw not just the theft of fire, but a defiance of order itself. Prometheus had challenged the king of gods. A punishment was inevitable, a punishment that would echo through time, shaping legends and terrifying mortals and immortals alike. Yet Prometheus understood the weight of what he had done. He knew the price would be high, perhaps unimaginable, but it was a price he was willing to pay, because without fire, mankind could never grow, never awaken the hidden powers within themselves. And in that quiet defiance, in that brave, silent love, he had already sparked something immortal. The world felt it. The first warmth, the first light flickered in human hands, small but unstoppable. And in that moment, Prometheus smiled. Not for himself, but for the lives he had changed, for the fire he had given, for the hope that would never die. Even as the shadow of Zeus's anger loomed, the story of fire, of courage, and of rebellion had begun. And this is where the tale of the dark punishment of Prometheus begins, where light became a gift, defiance a legacy, and suffering the price for humanity's first step into greatness. Fire. If you love myths told in a calm, cinematic style, hit that subscribe button and drop your city and time in the comments below. The heavens were still, but not for long. Zeus had seen what Prometheus had done, and the fire burning in mortal hands was wound across the sky itself. His eyes, dark and stormy, scanned Olympus, and for the first time in eternity, a god felt the sting of betrayal. How dare a titan, one of their own, reach out to the lowly children of earth and give them the power of gods? Rage rose in him like lightning, sharp and blinding, ready to strike. It wasn't just theft. It wasn't just disobedience. Zeus saw in Prometheus a challenge to the very order he had created. The throne of Olympus, golden and untouchable for eons, suddenly felt unstable. Every heartbeat of the king of gods echoed through the heavens, a pulse of wrath that rattled the clouds and shook the distant mountains. The winds whispered warnings, but the titan's defiance had already crossed the line. Prometheus did not flee. He did not tremble. Even as Zeus's gaze pierced the skies and thunder rolled like a warning drum, the titan stood firm. Because Prometheus had already seen the faces of men warmed by fire, eyes wide with wonder and hope. He had felt the weight of their trust, and he knew some gifts, no matter the cost, must be given. The council of gods gathered, silent and tense, their immortal forms reflecting the flickering light of Olympus. Athena's eyes were sharp, Apollo's face pale with worry, yet even they felt the gravity of Zeus's wrath. A punishment must be declared, a mark made on eternity, to ensure no god ever dared this again. Prometheus's crime could not be left unpunished. Zeus rose, tall and terrible, his cloak of storm clouds trailing behind him. "You have stolen what is mine," he thundered, his voice rolling like mountains collapsing. "You have dared to give mortals what they do not deserve. You will learn the price of defiance, and it will last forever." Even the birds of Olympus, those carriers of secrets, fell silent. A chill ran through the halls of the gods. None had ever seen Zeus move like this, the calm, calculated lord of the heavens, now boiling with an anger that threatened to scorch the earth itself. Lightning danced across his hands, and the air vibrated with the weight of inevitability. Prometheus's calm did not waver. He had known this moment would come. In the shadow of Zeus's rage, he felt no fear, only a quiet sorrow, a recognition of the cost of love. For the first time, he understood that giving fire to humanity was a rebellion that could never be undone, a mark that would follow him into eternity. And still, even as the heavens trembled, he smiled just slightly, because he had seen what fire could do. Chains will bind you, pain will be your companion, the eagle will come, and your immortal liver will be torn day after day, forever, Zeus declared, his words like hammers striking stone. And the winds carried them far, down to the earth below, where humans huddled around the new flames, unaware of the storm brewing in the heavens. They only felt warmth, hope, and light, and did not yet know that Prometheus's gift was also his curse. The gods moved swiftly, a silent army of divine power. Hephaestus, reluctant and troubled, was summoned to forge the instruments of torment. Even he, god of fire, hesitated at the task. Yet it was Zeus's will, and in the immortal hierarchy, the king's command could not be denied. Chains were forged, unbreakable, infused with the strength of divine fire itself. Every link, every shackle was a sentence written not in words, but in eternity. The plan was terrifyingly simple in its perfection. Prometheus would be bound to the lonely peaks of the Caucasus Mountains, high above the world, exposed to the endless sky. There, an eagle sent by Zeus would feast upon his liver every dawn. And yet, each night, it would heal, only to be torn open again with the sunrise. Pain without end, suffering without death, a punishment as absolute as Zeus's power itself. Even as Zeus declared the punishment, a strange stillness lingered in Prometheus's eyes. There was no fear, no regret, only understanding. This was the cost of love, the price of rebellion, the burden of a gift that could never be taken back. And in that quiet defiance, there was power, the kind of power that even a god could not erase. Down below, humans looked up at the stars, unaware that the godly thunder shaking Olympus was tied to their small fires, their newfound warmth, and their tiny sparks of hope. Prometheus had changed the world in ways even the gods could not fully comprehend. And as Zeus's wrath blazed, the Titan stood silent, unyielding, and utterly resolute. He knew that fire had been given, that light had been stolen, and that no punishment could ever erase the gift he had made. The skies darkened, Olympus trembled, lightning cracked, and somewhere in the distance, the mountains waited, ready to become a prison, ready to bear witness to the Titan's eternal torment. But even in the shadow of all that wrath, one truth remained. Prometheus's love for mankind had already burned brighter than the fear of any god. The story of fire, rebellion, and punishment had only just begun, and the echoes of this fury would resound through eternity. The mountains were silent, but the silence was heavy. High above the mortal world, where the wind tore across jagged peaks and clouds curled around the rocks like restless spirits, Prometheus hung chained, the metal bit into his flesh, cold and unyielding, yet nothing could break the fire in his eyes. He had given mankind light, and that choice had earned him this torment. Every dawn, the sky would darken with the shadow of an eagle. It was not just any bird, but a creature sent by Zeus himself, a living instrument of divine vengeance. Its wings cut the air with a sharp, haunting whistle, and its eyes gleamed with the promise of pain. The first strike came swiftly, tearing into his immortal liver, an agony that no mortal could ever endure. Yet by nightfall, the wound would close, his body healing as if mocking the suffering. And with the next sunrise, the eagle would return, and the cycle would begin again. Pain without end, death impossible, immortality turned into endless torment. Prometheus did not cry out. He did not scream or plead. His chains rattled in the wind, the mountains echoing with the clash of iron. Yet his gaze never wavered. For him, Suffering was nothing compared to the sight of humanity huddled around the fire he had given. Every flicker of flame, every spark of hope on earth, was a reminder that his pain had a purpose. Time stretched into centuries. The eagle returned day after day, its shadow cutting across the frozen peaks. The wind howled, carrying the echoes of Prometheus's silent defiance to the heavens. Zeus watched, storm clouds coiling around him, a fury that could destroy worlds. He saw the punishment executed perfectly, an unending cycle that would break any soul. Yet Prometheus remained steadfast. Even the mightiest eagle, even the sharpest talon, could not crush the unbreakable will of the Titan who had dared to defy the king of gods. Sometimes, in the quiet moments between the strikes, Prometheus looked to the horizon. Far below, humans were learning, living, creating. They were beginning to thrive with the fire in their hands, unaware of the price it had cost. Their warmth, their laughter, their tiny sparks of life. They were proof that his defiance had meaning, that his sacrifice was not in vain. In a strange way, the eagle, the chains, the endless sky, all became part of a greater story. Pain became a symbol of hope, suffering a seed for freedom. Even Hephaestus, who had forged the chains, sometimes watched from afar. The god of fire had done what Zeus commanded, but he could not help but feel a shadow of sorrow, a flicker of respect. Prometheus endured not out of weakness, but out of love. Every day, he faced death and rose again, stronger in resolve than any mortal or god. And yet, there was a rhythm to this torment, almost hypnotic. The eagle would come, the sun would climb, the winds would scream, and Prometheus would endure. The world below moved on, unaware that a god hung in suffering for their sake. The fire burned brighter, the human spirit grew stronger, and every spark in the darkness whispered the name of the Titan who had given it. There were moments, fleeting but real, when even the harsh wind seemed to bow, when the mountains themselves seemed to pause, as if honoring his courage. Prometheus had become more than a Titan chained to a rock. He had become a symbol, a reminder that defiance, when fueled by love and purpose, could withstand any punishment, endure any pain, and outshine even the fury of the gods. The eagle's shadow fell again, talons tearing through flesh, and yet Prometheus lifted his gaze once more. The fire below, the hope in mortal hearts, gave him strength. Pain was relentless, but so was his will. Chains could bind his body, talons could shred his flesh, and time could stretch endlessly, but they could never touch his spirit. And so, atop the lonely peaks, with the wind screaming like the cries of eternity, Prometheus hung. The punishment was eternal, yes, but it was also proof. Proof that courage, love, and sacrifice could outlast even the wrath of the heavens. The Titan endured, silent, unbroken, watching over the world he had changed forever. The fire still burned, and so did he, a quiet defiance etched into the very mountains, an eternal story of suffering, strength, and hope. Even chained to the jagged peaks of the Caucasus, Prometheus never lost sight of the world below. Every flicker of fire, every warm glow in a human home, reminded him of why he had defied the heavens. Pain could tear at his flesh, the eagle could come and strike day after day, but the spark he had given mankind burned brighter than any punishment. His suffering became silent, almost sacred, a testament to the power of selfless courage. Time moved in strange ways on the mountains. Centuries felt like days, yet the memory of each strike lingered in his mind. He had endured beyond what any being, mortal or god, could imagine. And still, he remained steadfast, watching, waiting, knowing that the story of humanity was being written in the warmth of every flame he had lit. Each hearth, each candle, each flickering fire in the dark became a tribute to his sacrifice. The world had begun to thrive, and with every spark of life, Prometheus felt a quiet satisfaction, a reward far greater than any comfort he could hope for himself. Occasionally, the winds would carry whispers of heroes, of humans who achieved greatness, and even tales of mortals who dared to challenge the impossible. Prometheus listened, silently proud. The fire he had given was more than warmth or light. It was knowledge, creativity, and the spark of ambition. It had awakened something eternal in mankind, something the gods could never entirely control. And then came the day of the hero. Heracles, strong and determined, climbed the mountains, his resolve matching the fury of Olympus itself. He broke the chains, shattered the instruments of torment, and for the first time in countless centuries, Prometheus could move freely. Yet even then, the Titan did not celebrate for long. His eyes looked not to himself, but to the world below. The humans he had loved, the species he had nurtured through fire and defiance, were thriving, creating, learning, living. In their freedom he found his true reward. Prometheus's legacy was not in his chains, nor in the eagle's torment, nor in the punishment imposed by Zeus. His legacy was in the fire that continued to burn in human hearts. Every discovery, every leap of courage, every spark of defiance against impossibility carried a piece of him. And though the heavens had tried to crush his spirit, they could not erase what he had given. Fire was no longer just a tool or a flame. It was a symbol of rebellion, hope, and enduring love. Even after Heracles left, even after Zeus's fury had cooled, the story of Prometheus persisted. Mortals told tales of the Titan who dared to defy the gods, who suffered endlessly for the sake of humanity, and who, through suffering, made the world brighter. His endurance became legend, his pain became poetry, and his gift, fire, continued to shape civilization, guiding humanity toward knowledge, warmth, and light. In the quiet moments, when the sun set and the firelight flickered across the faces of those who had inherited his gift, Prometheus smiled. The pain had been immense, eternal even, but so was the triumph. The eagle, the chains, the endless days of torment. None of it mattered compared to the world that now thrived because of his courage. He had given everything, yet in giving he had won. The mountains, wind-swept and eternal, held the echoes of his sacrifice. Prometheus's story became immortal, not because he had conquered gods, but because he had conquered fear, endured suffering, and changed the course of mankind forever. And in every spark of fire, in every warmth that banished darkness, the world remembered the Titan who had dared, suffered, and ultimately triumphed. This was not just punishment endured. This was redemption earned, a legacy carved into the very fabric of the world. Prometheus had given mankind more than fire. He had given them the courage to dream, the strength to defy, and the spark to endure. And that, perhaps, was the greatest gift of all.